I gently brushed the last crease from my navy sheath dress, taking a deep breath, before stepping further into Hamilton's prime, the kind of high-ceilinged, velvet-draped institution where even the silverware had a lineage. The marble floors gleamed beneath the glow of custom chandeliers, and the quiet clink of crystal glasses echoed like whispers of wealth. I'd dressed deliberately, no brand-name flash, no diamond-studded bravado, just the dress classic and simple, and a pair of sapphire earrings that once belonged to my grandmother Eleanor. She'd always said dignity didn't need sequins. It wasn't that I couldn't outshine the place if I wanted. My investment portfolio alone could buy the surrounding block twice over. But tonight wasn't about showing off. It was about letting them make their assumptions. After all, it was my family who'd chosen this venue, likely assuming it would make me squirm, a calculated jab wrapped in reservations and fine wine. Vivian, seriously. The mock surprise in my brother's voice bounced through the air like a tennis ball. Ryan Whitmore stood there, tailored within an inch of his ego, grinning like the cat who expected the mouse to beg for scraps. Didn't think you'd actually show? This place is a little above Amtrak prices. I caught my reflection in one of the giant beveled mirrors. No labels, no fuss. Just a woman who'd outgrown the need to perform. I'll manage, I said softly, though every syllable was steel. Ryan exchanged a smug look with his wife Lauren, who leaned toward my mother and whispered just loud enough to be overheard. Told you we should have picked somewhere more within her range. Little did they know the Magnolia Hospitality Group, owners of Hamilton's Prime, had been quietly folded into Orion Dynamics' luxury division last spring, right under their noses. I'd signed the acquisition papers in this very building. The Whitmore family celebration, as it was laughably called each year, had become more of a peacocking ritual than a meal. Ever since I'd walked away from Whitmore Capital a dozen years ago, at 26, things had been strained. My father Robert had scoffed when I said I was pursuing autonomous aerial logistics, flying gadgets. That's not a business, it's a phase, he'd sneered. Ryan naturally stayed. Now, the CFO married to Lauren, living in a Gold Coast penthouse with club memberships and a lifestyle that smelled like old money and new arrogance. They loved retelling the story of when I'd once needed a loan to fix a flat tire. And now Ryan leaned back as we were seated, napkin tossed onto his lap like a king bestowing grace. So, Vivian, he drawled, still fiddling with that drone hobby? I lifted my wine glass, letting the flavor settle on my tongue before replying. I thought of the desperate proposal Whitmore Capital had emailed earlier that morning, requesting a logistics partnership with Summit Freight Solutions, the same company Orion Dynamics had fully acquired 6 months ago. Something like that, I said. They had no idea that Summit's operations spanned across 6 continents with a fleet exceeding $1.8 billion in valuation, or that the original seed capital had come from a quiet exit deal I'd brokered with Velocity Motors years back. Only Grandma Eleanor had known the full picture. She'd told me, let them laugh. Just be sure you're the one holding the pen when it's time to sign the checks. Lauren let out a breathy laugh. She still drives that beat-up Chevy, doesn't she? If only she knew I'd landed my Falcon Elite X7 at the private terminal less than 2 hours ago. Ryan leaned forward with a smug smirk, casually adjusting his Monarch cufflinks. Speaking of wheels, Lauren and I just ordered the new Lincoln Sovereign, custom trim, hand-stitched Italian leather. You should see it. So what's it like, Viv? Taking the train into work. Good for the environment, I guess? Absolutely, I replied with a polite smile, my thoughts drifting to the Midwest Executive Terminal, our latest LEED-certified facility completed by Orion's aviation arm. I don't. My father cleared his throat, voice rough with disapproval. Now, Ryan, let's not get carried away. Not everyone is cut out for real finance. At least your sister is independent. He said it the way someone might describe an allergy. Oh, Lauren chimed in. Ryan has big news. Tell them, babe. Ryan puffed up like a blowfish. We're in talks with Summit Freight Solutions. If this closes, Whitmore Capital will manage all their Midwest logistics. We're talking billion-dollar territory. I arched an eyebrow. Impressive, I murmured, reaching for the breadbasket. Inside, I was already drafting the internal message that would go out from my office that evening, formally declining their proposal. When's the pitch? I asked, keeping my tone light. Tomorrow, Ryan said with pride. CEO's flying in. No commercial flights for this level of deal. Real money means real jets. If only he knew the jet belonged to me, that I'd be watching their meeting from my penthouse office at Orion Tower. I heard the CEO's identity is a mystery, my father added. That's what high-level business looks like. Lauren motioned to the waiter. Speaking of value, Vivian, they have a salad that's budget-conscious. I'll take the chef's tasting menu, I said, perusing the wine pairings. A long pause, $560 a head. The tension at the table rippled. Vivian, my mother whispered, that's steep. Are you sure? Don't worry, I said calmly, folding my napkin. I've been saving. Lauren scoffed. This isn't the time to perform. It's a little sad. I'm not performing, I said, meeting her eyes. Ryan snorted. What next? You've got a jet hidden in your backyard, too. Right then, his phone buzzed. He glanced down, and his entire demeanor shifted. Excuse me, he muttered and strode to the lobby, stiff as a statue. From the table, I could hear fragments. What do you mean the Summit CEO canceled? $1 billion deal. Can't just... When he returned, his cocky confidence had vanished. Lauren leaned close voice, a forced whisper. Everything okay? Just business, he snapped. Nothing Vivian would understand. I sipped my wine thoughts, already drafting the email I'd send as CEO of Summit. A firm, polite rejection of Whitmore Capital's bid. Lauren trying to pivot, the awkwardness piped up again. By the way, this restaurant part of the Magnolia Group now. Ryan and I just bought in. Right, babe? Ryan managed to nod. Almost 5%. Exciting stuff. How lovely, I said sweetly. I remembered approving their share purchase myself through one of Orion's shell companies. The waiter returned holding a gleaming bottle. A 1998 Napa Reserve, he said with a small bow. Compliments of the owner. Lauren blinked. There must be some mistake. We're shareholders. We didn't authorize anything. Not a mistake, madame, the waiter replied. The instruction was clear for Miss Whitmore's table only. Every eye turned to me. I raised my glass unbothered. How generous, I said. Ryan's phone buzzed again. Another fire to put out, I imagined. He excused himself. Lauren stared at the wine, then at me. I don't get it, she murmured to my father. They probably think she's someone else, he said quickly, maybe even hopefully. I just smiled. Tomorrow would be self-explanatory. The next morning, I was seated in my office on the top floor of Orion Tower, watching the feed from the glass-walled conference room. Ryan was already there, pacing like a man whose shoes suddenly didn't fit. The voice of Emily Barnes crackled softly through the sleek intercom embedded in the walnut-paneled wall of my private office. Mrs. Whitmore, your father and brother have arrived. They're accompanied by Mr. Brooks. I closed my eyes momentarily, breathing in the quiet hum of the room, the scent of espresso lingering from a cup half finished. Of course they were here. The trio had come cloaked in entitlement and certainty, ready to claim a victory they didn't know was already ashes. I straightened in my chair, my fingertips brushing over the cool surface of my laptop. To anyone watching this would seem like the crescendo of a long orchestral performance. But for me, it was the last note in a symphony I had composed in silence. If you've ever savored the delicate ache of vindication, if you've waited years to reclaim your name from the mouths of those who only used it to mock, then you'd understand the electricity crackling beneath my skin. This wasn't about wealth. This was about power reclaimed. Lauren had always hovered near Ryan like a loyal campaign manager, expertly smoothing his image, puffing up his ego. Robert, our father, came like a high priest of family myths there to reinforce the long-held fiction that Ryan was the family's financial messiah. I watched them on the feed as they postured at the conference table, unaware that the sands had already shifted beneath them. Perfect, I murmured, clicking open the draft that had waited in my outbox for precisely this moment. My fingers danced over the keys, deliberate and steady, as I scheduled the email to send in exactly 10 minutes. Subject: East Coast Operations Proposal. Dear Mr. Brooks, after careful consideration, Summit Freight Solutions has decided to explore alternative strategic partnerships for our East Coast expansion. While we sincerely appreciate Whitmore Capital's proposal, our long-term objectives align more closely with another direction. Best regards, Vivian Whitmore, CEO Orion Dynamics. 10 years of quiet grit, of enduring sneers and smug pity masked as concern years that they believed were failures had been the very foundation of my empire. While they hosted cocktail hours and counted club memberships, I built something that couldn't be measured by family approval. On the security feed, Lauren adjusted Ryan's tie with meticulous care, like a political handler prepping a candidate for debate. Robert claimed the head of the table, his presence steeped in smug nostalgia, as though sitting there could somehow rewrite the past. Emily's voice returned. The Summit team is here. Shall I send them in? Please do, I replied, never taking my eyes off the screen. 3 of Orion's top executives entered the glass-walled conference room. Ryan stood smile plastered in place. Welcome. We've been eagerly wait. Where's your CEO? Michael Grant, my COO, offered a measured smile. Miss Whitmore sends her regards. She's decided to handle this meeting in a slightly different way. Lauren blinked. Vivian Whitmore. Her voice hitched on the name. Right on cue, Ryan's phone vibrated. I watched him read the email, the blood visibly draining from his face as his confidence crumbled. This can't be right, he mumbled. They're rejecting us. Michael remained serene. Perhaps that's a question best posed to Vivian. Silence claimed the room like a sudden snowfall. Lauren's laughter was brittle. Vivian, what's she got to do with any of this? She could barely afford dinner last night. Michael tapped his tablet. The room's screen flared to life, illuminating a brief profile. Vivian Whitmore, founder and CEO, Orion Dynamics, owner of Summit Freight Solutions, Magnolia Hospitality Group, and over 60 corporate subsidiaries, estimated net worth $8.2 billion. I stepped through the conference doors. The silence cracked like a brittle vase. Lauren's complexion turned ghostly, Ryan's posture crumpled. Robert didn't move. His face was an unreadable stone. Good morning, I said with a calm that only comes from complete control. We need to discuss your conduct, Ryan. Lauren's voice shook. But you drive a Chevy. You borrowed money to fix it. Actually, I corrected, tilting my head. I own the dealership that services that car. The loan was a narrative I let you believe. Ryan, regaining his voice, stammered. But Summit Freight, the jet, this building. Yes, I said, a small smile tugging at my lips. The private jet you were so impressed by last night, it's part of my personal fleet. Would you like a tour? Orion Aviation built the terminal just last year. At last, Robert found his voice. So you've been building all this in secret. I turned toward the wall of windows, the city stretching below like a map I'd redrawn. While you mocked my drone hobby, I became one of the largest private investors in the country. That restaurant you just invested in, I own 40% of the group. The office tower your company leases from bought it last spring. And that private jet company you're desperate to land, just another division of my aerospace arm. Lauren began to cry, mascara bleeding down her cheeks in black trails. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at her unmoved. Would you have believed me? You all made it clear I was the family disappointment. It was easier to let you believe that while I built what you couldn't even fathom. Robert's voice was suddenly sharp. Now listen here. No, I cut him off, my voice cold. You don't get to play the family card now, not after years of disrespect. I placed a folder on the table. Let's talk about Whitmore Capital. Ryan stiffened visibly. We found some creative accounting in your recent filings. Care to explain? Ryan's face turned ashen. Lauren's head whipped toward him. What accounting? The usual inflated earnings, unlogged transfers, and about $3.4 million quietly redirected to a Cayman Islands account. Robert's voice rose. You've been investigating us. Naturally, I said coolly, I vet every potential partner. Michael stepped forward, handing each of them a copy of the report. Pages whispered as they turned. Lauren's hands shook. Ryan, she hissed, is this true? But Ryan had no defense. He stared at the document, defeated. Here's what happens next, I said, my voice steel. Ryan resigns quietly. If he does, this report stays internal. And if he doesn't, Lauren asked, her voice trembling. I shrugged. The SEC tends to enjoy these sorts of things. You can't do this, Robert said weakly. Actually, I already have. I pressed the conference phone. Emily, initiate Project Phoenix. Right away, Miss Whitmore. Project, what Lauren whispered. Fact, I said, facing them fully. Orion Dynamics is acquiring a majority stake in Whitmore Capital. Effective immediately. A full audit begins today, and leadership begins with change. Robert sank into his chair. You're taking over our family company, but it's our legacy. No, I said gently. It was your opportunity to build a legacy, but you chose favoritism over vision. I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and Lauren, that wine last night came from my private cellar. It's worth more than your Lincoln Sovereign. The weeks that followed unfurled like dominoes. Ryan resigned quietly as predicted. Lauren filed for divorce after absorbing the depths of his betrayal. Robert stepped down, too ashamed to face the company under my leadership. The weeks after the takeover were a blur of contracts, audits, and quiet power plays. I brought in the finest forensic accountants in the country, professionals, with eyes like hawks and patience carved from stone. Under my guidance, Whitmore Capital was systematically dismantled and restructured beneath the expansive, gleaming wing of Orion Dynamics. Layers of decay were peeled away, replaced with fortified compliance systems, and financial transparency so pristine it glinted under market scrutiny. The moment the financial world caught wind that I, Vivian Whitmore, was the architect of the acquisition, the company's stock surged with fevered excitement, investors scrambling to align themselves with the empire they had so long ignored. 3 months later, my mother reached out. Margaret chose a quiet, unassuming corner cafe this time, the kind with creaky chairs and coffee that smelled more like burnt hope than luxury. She sat across from me, smaller somehow, like a woman folded inward by shame. There were no velvet chairs or chilled champagne flutes here, only a chipped ceramic mug between us and the quiet ticking of a wall clock. After a long silence, she finally spoke, her voice almost lost beneath the clatter of cups behind the counter. "I don't understand," she said, eyes searching my face as though for a secret map. "Why did you live like you were struggling when you were a billionaire?" I stirred my espresso with slow, deliberate circles. The spoon tapped the rim with each revolution, a rhythmic punctuation to thoughts I'd long settled. Because I said quietly, "I needed to know who you all really were when you thought I was nothing." She looked away, and in that moment, the proud posture I remembered from childhood, always rigid, always composed, crumbled into something more human. "We were awful to you." "Yes," I answered, calm as a still lake. "You were." Her voice cracked, fragile and small. "Can you ever forgive us?" I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. "Forgiveness isn't the issue, Mom. It's trust. You showed me who you were when you believed I had nothing. So tell me, why should I trust you now that you know I have everything?" She had no answer, none that mattered. A year passed. I sat aboard my Falcon Elite X7, the same jet Ryan had once praised without ever suspecting the truth. Outside the window, the sky spilled open in shades of gold and steel as we descended toward the Midwest Executive Terminal. I was returning from a global tech summit in London, where Orion's European expansion had been sealed with quiet precision. The portfolio had grown, so had I. In that time, Lauren had remarried a modest CPA with gentle eyes and long hours. She now lived in a humble apartment in Lincoln Park, far from the penthouses and champagne brunches. Ryan. He was selling luxury SUVs in a New Jersey suburb, a far cry from the conference rooms where he once reigned. My father, Robert, had retreated to a quiet condo in Sarasota, his legacy reduced to framed headlines and fading relevance. The empire he once planned to pass down had been scattered like ash in the wind. My phone buzzed, a message from Lauren. "Happy birthday, Vivian. I know I don't deserve it, but I miss you." I stared out the window at the clouds drifting like white ships across a sea of sky, thinking of family power and the hidden toll of success. Could we rebuild something real, something earned rather than inherited, maybe? But not today. Today I was simply content, at peace knowing that I had created something extraordinary while they had laughed behind closed doors, raising glasses to their ignorance. Eleanor would have smiled. Mrs. Whitmore, the flight attendant, said with a soft, respectful smile, stepping into the aisle. "We're preparing to land at your private terminal." I nodded, folding the leather-bound report in my lap. "Thank you." "Oh, and can you make sure my Chevy is pulled up front? I think I'll drive myself today." Because sometimes the most profound revenge isn't found in grandeur, but in clarity. The kind of clarity that doesn't need applause. The kind that walks quietly through private terminals while owning the airline. That evening, I returned to my office, the city lights glittering below like scattered diamonds. I unlocked the hidden safe behind a panel of polished oak and gently placed a few artifacts within Ryan's resignation letter, the receipt from Hamilton's Prime, and a worn envelope containing my grandmother's note, faded but powerful. "Let them underestimate you, my dear. Success is sweetest when it blindsides them." How right she had been. I had spent a decade as the family ghost, dismissed, doubted, and overlooked. But I never let their small vision cage my potential. Instead, I turned every insult into a rung on the ladder I built myself. If you've ever been the quiet one, the black sheep, the one they whispered about at dinner, then this story is for you. Leave a comment. Share your story. Tell me where you're headed next. Because there's a quiet army of us, rising, ambitious, unseen, unstoppable. And if this journey stirred something in you, if you believe in the power of quiet resolve and relentless work, then join us. Like the video and hit that subscribe button. Your support fuels these stories. Let's build a space where ambition isn't mocked but honored, where no one has to explain why they're dreaming bigger. The world may not cheer when you begin, but oh, how silent they'll fall when you win. and that my friends might just be the sweetest sound of all.